Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Posted. We left at a good part. That was a cliffhanger. Sorry. So when we left off, Wolf in the middle of English class looked like he was having a major conflict with Jason. They were arguing. We're not really sure why. And Wolf, right after being told that if you write on a Post-it, you're going to have to see the principal, basically called him a butt, except for not so nice, and then pointed at him with the Post-it, got in trouble, got removed from the class, and that was pretty much where we left off. So we're going to start there. I didn't see Wolf for the rest of the day. After the blow up in English, he went home. Maybe because he had to, maybe because he wanted to, maybe both. Dee Dee told me he saw Wolf's mom in Big Ham's office before third period, and her hands were flying, and she was clearly upset. Principal Whittingham probably didn't know what he was getting into because Mrs. Thompson knew how to fight. In the end, she took Wolf home, and I made a mental note to call him as soon as I could and make sure everything was all right. I had never seen him go off like that. As the day dragged on, I didn't see near as many notes either, but I still saw enough to know that the war wasn't over. At lunch, it was just the three of us. We talked over what had happened and agreed that Jason Baker was indeed exactly what Wolf had called him on that Post-it note. Then Rose told us stories about some of the jerks at her old school who made Jason look like Gandhi. She made Branton Middle School sound like the oasis of brotherly love. Wolf will be all right, she said after the lunch bell. But for the first time since I met her, Rose Holland did not seem sure. That afternoon, I rode the bus by myself again, passing the empty seat next to Sean Forsett. During the ride home, I watched two seventh graders make tiny spit wads into BBs and drop them from behind Sean's thick curly hair, seeing how many they could stick in before he noticed. I almost said something. They were up to 11 when the bus stop came. My mother met me at the door wearing an apron and a smile. They gave me the afternoon off because I had too much overtime, she explained, her voice unnaturally bouncy. The house smelled like cinnamon and burning. I've been baking, she said. That's great, I said. Then I grabbed the phone and went into my room to call Wolf. I sat for a minute trying to figure out what I'd say, but before I could even dial, the doorbell rang. Could you get that? Mom yelled from the kitchen. I'm elbow deep in bananas. I put down the phone and I shuffled down the hall thinking it may be Wolf. Maybe he biked over to see what he missed at school, or maybe he'd come to talk. I opened the door halfway and peeked and saw a face. Surprise! It was Rose. She stood in front of my house in her olive green army jacket, her hair in her face, her hands tucked in her pocket. With her standing a step below, we were almost on even footing. Who is it? Mom yelled over the radio, and I almost said a girl, which would have been a huge mistake. So I said the same thing Wolf said to his mother. It's just a friend from school. Is it Bench? Mom called back. Mom used our nicknames. She was the only parent who did. Except for mine, she never called me Frost, because maybe it was because Dad introduced me to him in the first place. Rose stepped up and leaned her head in the door. It's Rose Holland, Mrs. Voss, she shouted carelessly. I came to get your son's help with an assignment. We have English together. I heard the radio turn off, and I felt my stomach shrivel into a hard little knot. No doubt the sound of a girl's voice, even a voice as husky as Rose, would come as a huge surprise to my mother. I considered dragging Rose with me outside, shutting the door behind us, but it was far too late. Mom appeared in the hallway holding a towel. Oh, Rose, hi, she said. You could see her processors firing. She looked at Rose and me, and then back at Rose. She was ready to jump to all kinds of conclusions, so I decided to stop that. We're writing an essay on Shakespeare, I said. Rose asked if I'd look hers over. Sounded plausible enough. Your son is an excellent writer, Rose said, playing along. Probably the best writer in class. Well, the only thing Rose had ever read of mine was an amorphism I stuck above the water fountain that day, and the one email I sent with its non-winking smiley face. My mother beamed, with her forehead smoothing. Oh, well, that's not a surprise. Did he tell you about the time he won the 5th grade poetry contest? Rose rolled her eyes. Are you kidding? It's all he ever talks about. I flashed her a what have you been sniffing look, but she ignored it. Your house is lovely, by the way. Well, thank you, Rose. Maybe my son would be polite enough to show you around before the two of you get busy. Everything stopped. Heartbeats, pumping lungs, the Earth's orbit around the sun. I let out a squeak, but Rose kept up a polite smile. My mother closed her eyes, her face turning strawberry. Sorry, not that you're going to get busy. I mean, before you had to get started on your work. You know what? She folded the towel in her hands. Right. Okay, never mind. Back to my banana bread. She looked over apologetically and went back to the kitchen. I cleared my throat and scratched the back of my head. Okay, then, I said. Oh, forget it, Rose said. She seems cool. She no doubt saw the red in my cheeks. How could you not like somebody who knows how to make bread? Banana bread is the best food since chocolate meets milk. Yeah, not when she makes it, I warned. Rose tugged on her jacket, wrapping it tight around her. It was cold enough outside that the grass crunched underfoot in the mornings when I walked to the bus. I looked over her shoulder down the street. It was deserted. No one could see Rose Holland standing at my door. Can we talk? She asked. Yeah, sure. Like inside the house? Rose asked. Sure. I nodded. I stepped out of the way and pointed down the hall. We can work in here. I shouted it loud enough for my mother to hear. I followed a few steps behind and shut my bedroom door, pressing my back up against it. Rose Holland stood in the center of the room, in the center of my room, taking it in. She was the first girl to ever do that, and I wasn't sure that she wasn't regretting it almost as much as I was. The room looked like a landfill. My mother let me keep it that way because she had a hard enough time keeping up with the rest of the house. But now I regretted not, at the very least, stuffing dirty laundry into the hamper. Only members of my tribe ever came in here, and I never cared what it looked like to them. But with Rose, I felt exposed. Those World of Warcraft posters, the empty Coke cans, the bedspread with the tardies on it. Hadn't she said she liked Doctor Who? I can't remember. She sat and watched 2 episodes with us. I mean, except sometimes people say things like that just to fit in. I spotted a pair of dirty underwear on the floor, and I tried to kick them under the bed, hoping she didn't see them when she walked in. They, of course, ended up getting caught around my big toe and doing a little dance to shake them off, but luckily her back was turned. I took a deep breath and realized that the whole room smelled like a musty smell, like mildew meets armpit. I wondered if I should open the window or get Febreze. Rose didn't seem to notice, though. It's almost exactly like I pictured it, she said, nodding. I'm not sure what that means, and what gave me more pause, the fact that Rose Holland could accurately guess what my room looked like after only knowing me for a week, or that she spent time even thinking about it. She explored for a second longer and then sat on my bed. I must have had an odd look on my face because she smiled. Let me guess, you have never had a girl sit on your bed before. Well, my mom used to read me stories when I fell asleep. Does that count? I said. No, but it is kind of awesome. My parents didn't read to me much, although they never said anything about me ducking under my sheets with a book and a flashlight and staying up for hours. She stood back up and walked over to my desk, spotting the sticky note hanging from the computer monitor, which was a thank you with the snowman sketch. I was afraid she would ask me why I kept it. I wasn't sure why, so I wasn't sure what I would tell her. Or maybe she would notice the half-formed origami lizard that was in my trash can. She didn't say anything about that either. She just moved over to my window, which looked out over the algae-crusted pond that sat between 2 rows of houses. This is pretty. Well, I wouldn't swim in that pond, I said. I know some boys who have peed there. Oh, some boys, huh? Rose repeated slyly and then shrugged. Well, it's still pretty. Your house is nice, too. I realized then that I had absolutely no idea where Rose lived. She always seemed to just materialize everywhere, like Harry Potter. How did you find this? Well, it doesn't take an FBI investigation, Frost, she said. She put her lips close to the window and exhaled and drew a thick, round smiley face in the breath smudge left on the pane. Actually, Wolf told me where you lived. I didn't move from my spot by the door, and I figured if things got too awkward before me, I would just make a break for it. Maybe run away from my own house and leave my mom to deal with the girl in my room. Wow, girl in my room. I glanced nervously around, thinking about the notebook of poetry tucked underneath my bed. Wolf said you wouldn't mind. I don't. Scratching the back of my neck. I felt like I'm breaking out in hives, so I tucked my hands under my armpits to keep from fidgeting. So you guys must talk a lot. I meant to phrase it as a question, but it came out more like an accusation. But she didn't seem to notice. She pulled out the desk chair and plopped down in it backwards, with her chin on the top. We've known each other for a week, she said. I guess I've known all of you for a week, but with Wolf it feels like longer. A lot had happened since Rose Holland showed up, it seemed. The phones, the note, the catch, felt like longer to me too. And I guess we do talk a lot, she continued. He's easy to talk to, don't you think? I nodded. He was, as long as you followed the rules. We don't talk about you, though, if that's what you're worried about, she said. Why would I be worried? I untucked my hands from my armpits and ended up shoving them into my pockets. From down the hall, my mother started belting out some song on the radio. Wow, she sings? Better than she cooks, I said. I moved towards the empty bed away from the door. So what do you two talk about, I said. Me and Wolf? You know, stuff, Rose said. Life. Anything. Everything. We talk about his parents a lot. And my parents. And school, books, movies, you guys. Us guys? I prodded. Yeah, you, Dee Dee, Bench. She left his name sort of hanging there, kind of like bait. I didn't take it, though. I was still stuck on the you. You just said you didn't talk about me. Rose tugged a strand of tawny hair hanging in front of her face, twisting it around and around. Okay, we don't talk about you that much, but we do sometimes. He worries about you. Why was Wolf worried about me? Last time I checked, I wasn't the one who got sent home for scribbling an inappropriate note. I wasn't the one leaping out of my seat trying to start a fight. I wasn't the one that anybody should be worrying about. He worries about what you think, Rose continued. He worries about your guys' friendship. She kicked off her feet and took a spin in the swivel chair as if gathering momentum for what came next. When she stopped, she was looking at the floor, and in that moment I remembered Rose from the first day, coming down the hall, afraid to look up, ignoring all the gawking eyes of the kids with their faces on her, feeling nervous and awkward, no doubt, like a boy with a girl in his room for the first time and a pair of underwear wrapped around his toe. That's why I came, actually. I know what's going on. I'm the reason Bench doesn't sit with you anymore, I know. I sat down in my bed and I made some pathetic sound like psh. Rose saw right through it. Psh, me all you want, she said. I'm not an idiot. I could tell he didn't like me from the beginning, and I probably should have just left you guys alone after that first day. I would have, except for I ran into Wolf after school and we started talking. The next day he asked me if I wanted to keep sitting with you guys. Of course he did, Wolf asked. I didn't ask. Bench certainly didn't ask. Rose Holland's going to do what Rose Holland wants to do. I made a production out of straightening the corner of my bedspread, the closest I'd come to making it in several months, trying to think of something to say. I almost said no, Rose continued, but that first day, most of the kids at the table just gave me these dagger looks when we walked by, like, don't you dare. You guys were different, and I honestly didn't know Bench was going to eat somewhere else. I thought about the note I found in the bottom of my locker. It's not you. That's all because of the game, I said. He's kind of a big deal now, sitting with his football friends. Rose shook her head. She knew right away I was lying. Bench had stopped sitting with us before that catch. He just hadn't started sitting somewhere else yet. It's okay, Frost. I'm tough. I can take it. You can't be friends with everybody. It was worse at my old school. Kids there didn't even bother with notes. They just told you right to your face. I had a nickname there, too, you know. I knew enough of Rose's names already. I didn't need another one, but she told me anyway. Dozer. Dozer? As in bulldozer, minus the bull, although maybe that was implied. Rose laughed. I figured it gave me permission to at least smile, but I didn't. Instead, I said, that sucks. Rose shrugged. Then she reached into the wastebasket under the desk and rescued my misshapen Komodo dragon, turning it over and over in her hands. She started to unfold it, carefully wrinkle by wrinkle, crease by crease, flattening and smoothing. She didn't even bother to read the riddle that Bench had left there with me. And this is where we're going to stop. Until next time.